All right, test, check 1, 2. How we sounding? All right, let's get this thing going. Hello, and welcome. What's up, Bishop Martin? How are you doing today? Hello, and welcome to another Wednesday feedback stream. My name is Zaak Kerstetter, and this is what we do here on Wednesday afternoons. You guys send me your tracks, and I listen to them, and I give you feedback on your tracks to the best of my ability, as well as everybody else in chat, hopefully. We'll also give you feedback. So we're going to start this stream the same way I normally start these streams, by first linking the spreadsheet in the chat and then pinning it up at the top of the chat. So if you are new around here and you would like to send me your track, all you need to do is click on that link. It'll take you to a Google Doc, and then you put your link in there with any of the other relevant info, and I will listen to them in the order that I receive them. A few quick things before we kind of start diving in here. This is the general rules for feedback or guidelines for feedback that I have every single week. So first off, original tracks only. So ideally no remixes or anything like that, partially for just copyright reasons, and then partially just because if I don't know the track you're remixing, it can be really hard to tell what's yours and what's somebody else's, and harder to give you feedback that way. On top of that, I would prefer works in progress over finished tracks. That way you can actually go back in and change things before you actually finally release something. If you don't have anything you're working on right now and you just got a track you just finished or you finished a while ago, that's totally fine, but I prefer works in progress. I think it makes it a little more interesting and allows you to actually do more with the feedback that I'm giving you. Other than that, I'm going to go through them in order I see them, just kind of top to bottom. If you have more than one track you would like to get feedback on, I would prefer that you wait till the end of the stream. Usually I have time to get through all of them, but sometimes I don't, so I want to make sure everybody gets a chance to get at least one song reviewed and listened to before we start getting doubles for people. I can already see people filling out the spreadsheet. Great. Other than that, all the videos, all the live streams from this channel get posted to the channel later on. You can find them in the playlist page. So if you want to go back and review your feedback at some future point, all of those get posted there. On top of that, if you can't make it to one of the streams, to one of the feedback streams, you can upload your song whenever you want to the spreadsheet. It's the same link every single week. And I just delete them once I get through all of them. So if you can't make it, you could upload it beforehand. The link is also available in the Discord if you want to check that out below. And that way you can just upload whenever you want. And then I will listen to it, and then you can watch the video whenever you feel like it. And then other than that, if you are getting feedback, it is highly encouraged. What's up, Julio? How you doing today? Perfect. I'm stoked to check it out. Punk Dad, how you doing? I'm doing quite well. If you are submitting a song for feedback, it is highly encouraged but not required that you also give feedback to other people. That way it's a community thing. Everybody helps each other out. And that way it's not just me talking into my computer, but you guys are talking together, learning from each other. We all can learn and grow as a community. And sometimes my feedback you might have different opinions about, and I'd love to hear about that. And that way we can talk about, different people have different opinions about music and choices you make when producing. So that's what I want to hear in the chat right there. Oh man, the spreadsheet is filling up fast. This is awesome. Cool. So because we got so many people here, also feedback is always free. So you're always welcome to come in here, send me your tracks. I will always listen to them because this is something I really enjoy doing. If you would like to support the channel, there are a wide variety of ways you can do that. You could join the Patreon, that helps support us. You can super chat in YouTube. If you don't want to pay money or you're broke or whatever, you can hit the like button. You can subscribe. You can share my channel with your friends. That's actually something I need a lot of support with right now, is just getting the channel out there and getting people aware that I exist. So any help just getting the word out is greatly appreciated. And like I said, you don't need to pay any money for any of the feedback. So Tom, how you doing? And Willie, good to see all you guys here. This is awesome to have so many people here at the start of the stream. Sweet. So we're going to go ahead and start with the track from Bishop. I never know whether I should call you Bishop or Martin or what. All right. As always, with the first song of the afternoon, I'm going to do a little sound check here. Just make sure. Let me know if it's too quiet, too loud. Okay, I wasn't sure if Bishop was the title. As like you were like, I don't know. I don't know. Nice. That's a really cool song. I'm just reading kind of your comments you left in the spreadsheet. Overall, I really like it. I think it has a lot of like really high energy, and it has this almost kind of like 90s rave vibe to it, like a bit of like a throwback kind of vibe, which I think is super hot right now. I think that there were a couple of things mix wise and a couple of things vocal wise, or not vocals, sound design wise, that I think could use a little bit of love. But I like where your head is at with this track for sure. So you can put vocals on this. I'm not what kind of vocals are you planning to put on here? Because I feel like one of the big issues I'm hearing right now is this track already sounds really crowded, especially with all the different synth layers happening at the same time. And I'm worried if you have a bunch of really big vocals that are taking up even more space in the track, then it's going to sound even more cluttered. And I think that might cause you issues. If it's really kind of light and minimal vocals where you occasionally have like little samples of, somebody saying something or singing something, I think that'd be fine. But I think if you're planning on adding like verses and choruses in here, you're gonna have to scale back a lot of the synth work you're doing just to create room so it doesn't sound too crowded. I could definitely hear some like Prodigy style vocals on this. That could be really cool. This whole track actually has a very kind of like Prodigy kind of vibe. Okay, yeah. Chanted screaming sounds great. I think that could work really well on this. But in terms of things that I think need a little bit of work in here, one of the big things throughout the entire track was that the kick drum was just not really present. I could hear it, but I couldn't really feel it. So that kick can, I think, go way up in volume, and I would not be opposed to that. Other than that, I think a lot of your synth work was really good and really cool. I think, however, there were a few situations where it felt like there's a little bit heavy on the reverb, especially in one of these really early sounds. I think it's the next sound that comes in. Yeah, that guy. I'm just hearing a lot of this very kind of noisy reverb on that, which I think sounds cool, but if you dial it back a little bit, then I think that'll be great. Yeah, the drums for the most part are pretty good mix-wise. It's just mostly the kick is just getting lost in the sea of sounds that's happening here. And I think for this style of music, you want to make sure that kick is like clear as day. It should like be cutting through everything. Yeah, the thing about that with the kick, just turn the volume on the kick track way up. And if you don't have any room, then turn everything else down so the kick stays loud. What's up, Gaunt? Yeah, how you doing today? Other than that, in terms of synth things, there was one other point where you had these two synth lines happening at the same time, and that's when it felt the most cluttered, I think, around this area. Yeah, you have that one synth line with the really long notes, and then there's a bass line going underneath it. Those two feel like they're conflicting with each other just in terms of like there's similar sounds in similar frequency ranges, playing different notes, and it just, like I said, makes it sound a little cluttered. This part's great. Love this part. This part I also really love. This is the part that like definitely has that like very like Blade soundtrack kind of 90s rave vibe that I'm really digging. You got your kicks in a drum loop. If you can, slice out those kicks from those drum loops, put them on a separate track, and then adjust the volume for them separately. That's probably how I'd deal with that. Or just take what you already have, and anytime there's a kick, have a separate MIDI track where you just have your own kick, and that way you're layering a kick on top of the exact same timing as the kick that's already there. That would be the other way I would deal with that. This part sounds really cool. You have this kind of like scratchy synth sound in here that I love, but I think is a tiny bit too loud. This part with some vocals, I think, would be really good too. I love the weird dissonance on those chords that come in there. This is another one of those parts where things start to get a little bit too chaotic in terms of how many layers you have going at the same time. So I think you might need to make some tough choices here about either deleting certain layers or making certain layers intentionally much quieter. And that way, the ones that you think are more important, you can hear a bit more. Yeah, that's super cool. I like the rest of what you got going on. The other thing I think would be kind of cool that I think you have some room to experiment with is a little bit of negative space. So you have a lot of these really long sustained notes throughout the entire track. Like if you just pick a random point, long notes, long notes, long notes. So occasionally either make those notes shorter so there's space in between them, or just create little bits of silence in between maybe a chord or in between certain notes. And that can be a great way to like create some more dynamics instead of just being like long notes all the time with a bunch of quick notes on top of it, if that makes sense. Yeah, I don't think you need to forfeit maximalism. I think you can have all those layers and you can have them work together. But I think that in certain situations, part of the mix here is going to be turning down some of those layers so you can still hear them. They're still there, but they're not all fighting each other as much, if that makes sense. But yeah, I think this would be really cool once I hear it with the vocals and kind of see how that changes a lot of things in the mix and see where you sit with it. But love the energy, love the style on it. I like a lot of the synth work and what you're doing with that. Yeah, budgeting for frequencies is a great way to put it. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, super cool. I think it's got a bit of work that needs to be done here and there, but I think you got a really cool, nice start for a track. Yeah, panning would also help with a little bit of clarity here. I'm not sure how much panning you did, but that would also create some space in your mix. I agree with Punk Dad there. Sweet. Well, chat, any other thoughts, questions, comments, ideas about this track? Let us know in the chat. Next up, we got Julio. And if anybody here is just joining us and would like to share their track, there is a spreadsheet that is linked or pinned up at the top of chat. And you can click on that. That takes you to spreadsheet. And that's where you send me the track. Yeah, no worries, Bishop. Nice. I feel like you've been making a lot of progress since I think the last track you sent me. Uh, yeah, it definitely has that kind of reggaeton vibe with almost a kind of like dubby kind of piano. Um, yeah, Jason, you can link a track in the Discord, but you'll probably have to remind me to go check it in probably when I'm listening to the next song. So I like what you're going on here. I think the piano actually works really well, and I think you could lean even harder into that kind of like dub style piano where you really use a lot of reverbs and delay on the piano to make it kind of bounce around the space, and I think that could work really well and with the beat you have going on. I'm just kind of going through it chronologically. I like what the piano is doing. It does get pretty repetitive. It's kind of the same pattern for the most part the whole way through. So it'd be cool if that changed up a little bit as the song progressed. All right, so I like the beat as it comes in here. However, the piano part during this section, especially right here, feels very quantized and it feels rhythmically not as interesting as the other parts. If you listen to the beat and the notes, the timing's exactly the same. With occasionally some extra notes thrown in there. So I think playing around with space and not having your notes always be like exactly on time, and maybe throwing in some like faster notes and then some slower notes to kind of vary things up a little bit more will be really useful. And it's mostly just this section. Once we get over here, it gets better, I believe. Like this piano part feels pretty good. I like that little sound too. And I like, it almost sounds like little kind of like glitchy pianos, like little edited pianos in there. Those are really cool, and I think you could definitely play around with that some more. Yeah, the percussion here definitely feels a little bit too loud. There's a few bits of the percussion that are sticking out more than others, which I think somebody said in chat. But I like the percussion. I like what you have going on with it. And then something happens here. Your kick gets louder here for some reason. And I think I liked the level of the kick during this entire first half, but in this last section here, it definitely feels like it gets louder. Either it's at higher velocity or something's going on with the kick. So I would tone that down a tiny bit to the same levels as it is over here. Like it feels like during this section here, the kick and the bass sit well with each other. I can hear both at the same time and neither one is overpowering the other. And then once we get over here, the kick overpowers the bass and I lose the ability to hear what's going on with the bass as much during this section. And I like the outro here. I think there is a lot of room to play with this outro to really make this feel like, okay, we've arrived at an ending to this song. So this could include things like slowing it way down. So and playing the exact same chord progression, but just making each one, half as slow or whatever. So there's a lot of that space, which also would kind of lean more into that kind of like dub style where you put a bunch of reverb and delay. So you have like chord and then it echoes out, and then chord and then it echoes out, as opposed to kind of like the same timing that we've heard throughout the entire song. I guess you do that a little bit. I guess more space in here towards the ending. You could do that, that'd be great. The other thing you could do here at the end is do an octave change, especially for that melodic part. Either have it go up an octave or down an octave, or layer it a little bit more. I don't know, like make it so that the outro feels like it still grabs your attention as opposed to just being kind of more of what we heard before. But yeah, I like what you're going for here. I can see where this track is going, and it seems like you have a pretty good understanding of stylistically what you want to do with this genre. I also wonder if you're planning on adding more layers here. I think adding vocals would be a really nice way to round out this whole arrangement, and I think make the whole thing work really well. I feel like and again, they could be really minimal vocals, just some kind of like oohs and ahs and that kind of thing, or they could be whole verses and choruses if you want. But I think that this kind of track, I think, would do all with vocals. I think what else to put on here? Some horns would work really well. I would not mind some like trumpet or something like that. I think that could fit in here as well. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking here. Julio, let me know if you think that's helpful or useful information. Chat, if you got any other thoughts, comments, ideas, questions, let me know. What do you mean by make it more bulky? Just like make it like a more kind of like dance hall-y kind of thing, or what do you mean by bulky? Just bigger in sound? Because I think the beat sounds really good. Yeah, I think if you want to go more EDM-like with it, then I think you want to probably swap out the piano a bit more and try something else. I think the piano to me has this more kind of like chill on the beach kind of vibe and not as much like a EDM kind of vibe. So I think the piano is what's kind of like holding it back more than the beat is. All right, next up we got a track from Guyane. Close those guys out of there. What's up, Janef? How you doing? Yeah, there are definitely examples out there of like reggaeton EDM, kind of like just big beat and just making it super hyphy. That can definitely work really well. Nice. This is a dope track. I like it a lot. We don't get a lot of trip hop around here recently, and I can definitely hear the like sneaker pimps kind of influence on there for sure. So yeah, so I agree with people who are saying in chat. I think the vocals are pretty dope. I have a couple comments on those, but I think the vocals work really well for this kind of vibe, and I think they fit with the instrumental pretty well. I think my biggest piece of feedback on this is going to have a lot to do with the drums. I think the drums, to me, they're cool. They have a nice rhythm, but they sound a little generic. They sound a little bit just kind of like a preset drum rack or a preset kind of like drum loop. And it kind of works a little bit because it does have, again, that's kind of like 90s trip hop kind of vibe. So it is a little bit of that throwback to that time period. But I think what I want to hear on here is more like DJ Shadow, almost kind of like sampled drums, where it's like a sampled drum beat that like has this nice kind of like hip hop feel to it. I think that would work really well. And that might be, either that might involve you having to do some crate digging, finding an old drum break and tossing it in there, slicing it up a little bit. That could be really cool. Or finding some kind of drum rack or drum preset that's going to have a bit of that kind of like acoustic, 60s drum sound. And I think that would work really well, just playing a hip hop beat. Yeah, just listening to these, they sound like a generic, almost like not quite an 808 kit, like a 909 kit or something like that. And so I think the more you can, the 909 kit, called it. The more you can move away from that, the more you can move away from those kind of like, this is a generic drum rack sound, the more human it's going to sound, and the more personal it's going to sound, and the more interesting it's going to sound. So I think that's your biggest weakness right now, is that 909 rack. So if you can replace those drums with either your own drum samples or finding a drum loop or some kind of drum break, I think that's going to pave your way to making this track sound really dope. Other than that, I think, like I said, the drum beat is cool. I like the bass line. Yeah, and I think the vocals work really well here. I think it's unfortunate that it's a slice vocal, but I mean, if I just heard this, I'd be like, I never would have known that that's a slice vocal. Pause for thought as I draw from the heavenly lake. Walk awkward from enemy gaze. So barefaced. I kind of feel like instrumentally, I would like one other sound to be in here. Right now, we're basically just getting drums, bass, and vocals. And then later on over here, we get this kind of noisy synth, which I love. This guy. That's super cool. But maybe something that comes in a little bit before that gives it a little bit more of like a melodic feel would be great. And then this sound, I love. I kind of want it to do something a little bit more than this, though. It kind of just does that and goes away, and I think it comes back later. I kind of want it to, it has this nice kind of like pitch change to it. I kind of want it to go farther in either direction, like either pitch up way high or like pitch down way low, or maybe play some a few different notes. It's like I want it to feel more complex than what it is. But in terms of atmosphere and vibe, I think it fits perfectly. The other feedback I had about the vocals. A hair less reverb on the vocal, and I'd be totally fine with that. It's like, it's so close to being perfect, but I think it's a little bit too much. Love this bass sound. Fantastic. I like the French at the end. That's cool. Yeah, with that sound right there, I think if that sound does a few more things, then that'll really help the whole song really just work. Right now, it just kind of does the same thing over and over again. So I think if you explore that sound some more and really play around with it, I think that could be really cool. Yeah, and then as somebody mentioned in chat, a little bit more variety in the drums. It's kind of like the same beat over and over again. But yeah, the big thing for me is do more with that kind of gritty synth, get away from the 909 drum rack, and you're mostly home free. And then it's from there, just kind of tweaking little details from there. But yeah, I want to, if it were up to me, I would go for a more kind of like straight up hip hop, like I said, DJ Shadow kind of drum beat, but up to you which direction you want to go with it. It's a super cool image too. It's pretty sick. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking here. Once again, I feel like every track today has really been nailing it in terms of style and kind of like doing something interesting with the style that they're going for. So that's true for this one too. Awesome. Once again, I'm just going to probably do this between most songs now because we're getting some more people coming in. If you are new here and you'd like to share a track, click on the link up at the top of chat, and that'll take you to the spreadsheet. And that's where you send me your track. All right, next up, we got a track from Willie. Yeah, this sounded dope. Dorad, to answer your question about free synths, Vital I'd recommend. or the rent-to-own version of Serum. It's $10 a month for 20 months or something like that. So it's still expensive, but it's only $10 a month. Yeah, it's on Splice. Yeah, I think it's very appropriate that you have a flame as your image here because this track is super fire. Sounds really good. I have a few really minor details that I think are worth looking into. But in terms of arrangement, sound design, the whole thing sounds very polished, and I think you should be really stoked about how the track came out. The intro was beautiful, perfect, loved it. Had a really nice progression of ideas from the piano and the kind of like bit of white noise and nature sounds into the clock sound and the bass here. Pretty much perfect. The snare during this part does sound a little bit dry to me. I wouldn't mind if it had a hair more reverb on it. Again, all my feedback here is gonna be very, very minor detail stuff, so don't stress about any of this. But if it were up to me, a little bit more wetness on the reverb on the snare here would be great. This part's awesome. These vocals were fantastic, and I'm a little surprised that they didn't come up again. At least I don't think they did. So if you wanted to make these more of a kind of thematic element for the song, I definitely wouldn't mind that. Is that you singing, or is that just a sample of somebody singing? It sounds like you're doing some interesting filter motion on your kick there, or maybe it's a velocity thing on the kick. I just noticed like some of the kicks sound different than others. I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but it just is something I noticed. I'm curious whether that's intentional or that was something not intentional. This part's fantastic. The only feedback I have about this section is a little bit of negative space. Every once in a while, just cut out those synths and have like a quarter note, eighth note of silence, and then bring it all right back. And I think that would really help kind of like make this part feel really, what's the right word for it? It would just create the amount of space that like would give that ebb and flow as opposed to just being all synths all the time. You do that a little bit later on, but I think you could really play around with more of that space. Like right here, right there, and then bring it back in. Cool. So you do it right there with that little, I don't know, squonky sound. More stuff like that, I would not be opposed to. All right, and then in especially this area right here, the one other thing I think it's really important for you to watch out for is watch out for some of the reverbs on some of those sounds. I think that they will end up taking up a lot of space in your mix and will make it sound a little bit too overwhelming. So I noticed it right here and maybe a little bit right here that you have a lot of these kind of like sounds that kind of like float in and float out that are really pretty and work really well. But I think you got to watch out to make sure they don't, especially with the reverbs, become too prominent in the mix. Let's listen to this part again real quick. Yeah, this. Like right here, especially, you can hear it. Yeah, I love how you have those sounds floating in and out. That works fantastically. Is there a violin right there? That little violin in there is sick. I really like that. Yeah, I don't really have any complaints about the last part here, besides stuff we talked about before. A little bit of negative space. Watch out for some of those reverbs. But yeah, the mix sounds really clean. The drums sound really solid. All the synth work sounds fantastic. Really, really solid track here. It kind of reminds me of one of my somebody I used to listen to a long time. This dude named Ganucho. Let's see if I can find it. This album right here. Yours is much more future bassy, but a lot of your kind of like use of natural sounds with sounds coming, like very synthetic sounds coming in and out that work kind of together, kind of reminds me of this album, which is one of my favorite albums of all time. But yours is much more kind of like future bassy, in your face than this, but you should check it out. You guys should all check out this album because it's fantastic and very, very underappreciated. Yeah, I definitely wouldn't. I would not mind taking a look at this project file for sure. Yeah, let me put this in here. I'll just put it in the chat there. All right. Sweet, move on to the next one. We got a track from After Party. Dope. I love it. This might be one of my favorite tracks you've done, at least that I've heard so far. Uh, stylistically, it feels like a departure a bit from some of your other kind of like lo-fi Boards of Canada stuff, and I think it moves it in a really good direction, where it no longer is sounding like something else I've heard, but it's like it feels very much like you, which is probably one of the biggest compliments I can give to an artist. Um, I definitely wanted there to be a beat here. I wanted this kind of like I could see this being a really fantastic opening track of an album. It's like the first track, it just does this thing, and then you actually kind of go into the rest of the album. Um, but I also would very much love to hear where you take this. If you like, okay, you have this little kind of 2 minute build up, and then you hit them with the drum beat, and then kind of see where it goes from there. Uh, and it could be either like a lo-fi hip hop kind of thing would work really well. You could do the post rock thing. I think that could like building into that kind of Godspeed You Black Emperor, explosions in the sky, kind of like big energy build would be really cool here. But I think there's also something to be said for the kind of like short and sweet, like here's this idea, then it's over. And I always think it's better to leave your audience wanting more than to give them too much, right? If the song's too long and you know you give them too much, then people are not into it. But if there's a song like this, we're like, oh man, I wish I could hear more of it. That's a much better place to be in. Um, yeah, so I think that if you're gonna make it longer, it's got to have like a whole separate section to it. But if you want to keep it this length, go for it. In terms of the actual track itself, I honestly don't have a lot of critical feedback here. Um, I love the kind of like bells, this great amount of reverb. They sound like slightly out of tune, which is perfect. The little like feedback guitar sounds work like layer really well. The visuals work really well. Yeah, mix wise, it sounds like very on point. I wouldn't mess with it too much mix wise. You can hear everything the right amount. It's sounding really good. I'd honestly like not much I would do to change this. This might be a really interesting track that you would like send off to people, maybe even people in the community, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, to do some remixes. If you're not feeling like you want to put the beat on there, see if you can get somebody else to put a beat on it and see how they approach it and see where it goes. Um, but yeah, I like this track a lot. And I feel like if it were up to me, I probably wouldn't put too many more layers on it because I think it has this really nice line of acoustic sounding things, uh, more kind of electronic sounding things, but it's like the right mixture of both of them, and it's like kind of minimal, but it has like it has all the of enough elements to keep it interesting. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking about it. Um, but yeah, super sick. Chat, what do you think? Thoughts, comments, ideas? Let me know. Also, I would like to point out if you are enjoying the feedback, feel free to hit the like button or any of those buttons. Uh, that would be super cool. Sweet. So next up, we got a track by Janef. Awesome. Thank you for the super chat. I super appreciate it. like After Party, that's like a lot of your tracks in the past have been really good. I think that's one that like if I heard that on an album on Spotify, I would or like that's one you could like send off to record labels, and I think it's pretty much good enough for you to just like there it is and see who likes it. Nice. I'm digging it, Jeff. I think that it definitely feels like a bit of a sonic progression for you, where you're getting a little bit more experimental with some of your production techniques, and I think it's working for the most part. Overall, I think the whole thing flows pretty well. I did feel from about here to here, so I'm about a minute and 40 to about 2 minutes 30, this kind of area. It wasn't grabbing me the same way. It felt like a lot of it was just kind of the same ideas repeating themselves. So I'm wondering what you can do in this section here to keep it new and keep it interesting. Because otherwise, like, I don't know, it's like I need something new to grab my attention in this area. I think that'd be pretty helpful. But other than that, I like what you're doing with the horns. I like what you're doing with like the occasional glitchy things in here. The beat sounds really good. I love this intro quite a bit, actually. Thanks for the super chat, Punk Dad. I really appreciate it. Okay, so if you're gonna put vocals in here, that definitely will help kind of fill the area in quite a bit. This part I thought was a little strange, and I have mixed feelings about it. It sounds like the beat comes in, and then you cut it for a second, and then it comes in for real. And that kind of fake out can be really cool if you're trying to do that. But for me, it felt a little strange. Let me listen to it one more time and see how I feel about it. Yeah, I'm not sure if I like it or not. It's kind of strange to me. It feels like we get a beat and then it cuts, and then get a beat and then it cuts, and then the actual beat happens. Chat, let me know what you think about it. I'm gonna play it one more time and see what you think. So a beat and then it cuts out. And we get beat and cuts out. And the actual beat happens. It's weird. It's interesting, and it definitely caught me off guard and kept me on my toes. I'm not sure if I love it or not, though. So think about that as you're working on this track and see where it sits with you. And I'm not sure if I have a hard yes or no on that. I think it's interesting and it's surprising, which makes it unique, which is positive. But at the same time, it felt a little kind of stutters in kind of a weird way, which I was not a huge fan of. But that, I think, is going to be up to you as the artist to decide which direction you want to go with it. Other than that, this part's dope. It sounds really good. And the use of the vocals in this is fantastic. It feels like a real level up in terms of some of the vocal chops and samples you're using in there. So I like that a lot. I'm assuming there'll be an actual vocalist in here during this section, which I think will help kind of make this whole section work a little better. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but it definitely feels like vocals here would be good. A tiny bit more volume on the kick, I wouldn't mind, but I think that's something that's more of a mix thing that you don't need to worry about yet until you get the vocals in there. Yeah, that use of horn with what sounds like a little guitar in there is fantastic. Yeah, that's kind of my major feedback here. I definitely would love to hear this once you get the vocals on there, because I think that'll make a big difference in terms of if you want to switch up the arrangement, how you want things to flow. I think the beat works really well. I love the horns. I love the occasional kind of like glitchy choppies in there. I think that works really well. And as always, everything just sounds really clean on your tracks. There's not a lot of like unnecessary sounds here, and everything sounds like it belongs together and fits together really well. It's just that little part where the beat comes in that I'm still not sure how I feel about it. Any other thoughts on this one? I think your sub here is really subtle, but I think it works well with this. It's like, it doesn't need to be really in your face. It just kind of like fills in that low end pretty nice. So nice work on that. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking about this track. I think the vocals will make a big difference in terms of where it goes and how it changes. All right, next up we got a track from Dig the Cat. I feel like we haven't heard from him in a little bit. Yeah, no worries, Jason. It's good to have you back. Nice. Yeah, I'm digging the kind of like chillness of this. It has like a really kind of like calm, mellow vibe to it that I think it works really well. I think a couple things about the arrangement. I do feel like the intro was too long before we get to the like main kind of like meat and potatoes of the track. Not that I thought the intro was bad or anything like that. I just think it could be a tiny bit shorter, and I think that would just make the whole thing flow a little better. Same thing for this little break section here. I think this could be a tiny bit shorter, and I also wouldn't mind that. My big issue here is your kick sample you're using. It has this very big kind of mid-rangey sound to it, and I think it's okay, but I kind of want like a bit of like a cleaner, smoother kick. Like if you listen to this, you can really hear the resonance in that mid-range just kind of echo out. So if it were up to me, I would have like a tighter, less mid-range focused kick, and I think that will it'll just sound a little cleaner, and I think it'll mesh well with the kind of like mellowness of the rest of the track. That might be me just being personally biased because that's the kind of kick I like in songs that I make. But it just was like a bit too much mid-range. So either change the sample selection or maybe EQ out some of the mids from your kick. And I think that would I don't know, to make the whole thing sound a little smoother. Other than that, I like the violins. I think the bass line here is probably one of the strongest parts of the whole track. I think that it sounds really cool. I love it, and I think it's fantastic work on that. I wouldn't mind if there's a little bit more decay on the bass line there, so there's a little bit more space in between each note. So instead of it just being like max volume all the way through, it kind of like dips down in between each note. It's a very minor concern. I wouldn't stress about it too much, but if it were me, that's probably something I would try to achieve. I'm not sure how you made this bass line, but if you can do that, if you synthesized it, I think that'd be great. I like those chords, the little like strummy chords with the little echoey sounds, great. And this part's dope. I think the percussion is a little bit too loud. And then what was the other thing off of here? I don't mind the kick in this section because there's so many other things in the mid-range that are competing with it. I don't notice that mid-range. It's specifically and generally in the parts where it's mostly just the kick happening that it's bothered me the most. I really like the use of electric piano. I think that sounds great. However, when the electric piano ends and you transition to the next sound, it just cuts off. And so I'd watch out for that and make sure you're getting the full tail there. I forget exactly where it is. Right there, that little transition felt a little bit like I would like to hear the resonance of the electric piano ring out, and then as the kind of violins fade in. It just felt like it just ended too soon. This part's cool. I think you mentioned in the chat that you have a melody in mind, but you haven't put it in there yet. I think this would be a good part for some more melodic elements to help kind of carry through this section. I like this sound a lot too. Like I said, this section I think is a tiny bit too long. Up to you, but I would make it a little shorter. And this section kind of feels like a carbon copy of this section here. I think as you go through and progress on this track, if you could figure out a couple ways to make the second beat section stand out a little bit from the first beat section, I would not mind that. But yeah, really solid work. It kind of reminds me of, I don't always get confused. I think it reminds me a little bit of like Apparat, this kind of like mellow kind of housey thing. Yeah, but it sounds cool. Chat, you got any other thoughts, questions, comments, ideas? Oh, wait, almost skipped somebody. All right, so next up we got a track from Morgan. Cool, yeah, I look forward to seeing where you go with that track. Nice. Morgan, I'm not sure if you're still in chat or not, but I think you have a lot of the right ideas here, but I want to hear more. Like, I want you to dive deeper into these sounds and see where else you can take them. It sounds like you kind of have about like 4 or 5 layers of different kinds of sounds that are just kind of like looping together with it. And they change a little bit over time, but I think you can like really play around with each one of these different sounds and see like what it can do. So let's start from the beginning here. So I actually really like this little marimba sound you have going on. I think that's actually really cool, and I think that that could definitely play more of a role in this track. Like right now, it's kind of like a background sound for the most part, and I think you could definitely like play around with that idea and really kind of see where you can go with it. I do feel like you're a little heavy on the delays on the snare. I'm not entirely opposed to it. But I think you could have a little bit less delay there, and I wouldn't mind that. And then you have that kind of, I actually, once again, have mixed feelings about something. So you have this kind of like strange snare placement. You have your claps, and then you get that occasional snare, which sounds out of place, but I think that you can get away with that as a stylistic choice of like, if that's what you want to do and you want to kind of like have that in that spot, that's totally fine with me if you like it there. I think it works okay. But like during this part, it would be cool if that marimba changed up a little bit. So we get like one version of it for the intro and then a different version as we get over here. And to do this, you could half time it, you could double time it, you could pitch it up an octave, pitch it down an octave, you could chop it up, you could cut out every other note. There's like a bunch of different ways you could start processing this to get a little bit more out of that marimba sound. I do feel like this section goes on a little bit too long. Here's the other thing I think will be really helpful for you in terms of your arrangement. There's a few sections in here where one new sound comes in or one sound goes out at a time. And that can work. That can be a thing that you do. I find it's much more effective when you have 3 things that change simultaneously. So right now, when that little wobbly synth guy comes in, it just starts. And nothing else in the song changes. And nothing in the song lets you know that something is about to happen. So you either have to have some kind of transitionary sound to kind of warn your audience that a new sound is coming in. And this could be a little drum fill, it could be a little noise sweep, it could be a little reverse sound. Anything like that will help kind of prepare your audience for change. I think it's really important that you set up the expectation that something's about to happen. And then when you deliver on that expectation, it's really effective. And as of right now, that sound just kind of comes out of nowhere. And it's like, it's cool, and it works in the song, but preparing your audience for that thing to happen is really, really useful. And that happens later on in the song too, when something else changes. And then, like I said, rule of 3s. Have two new sounds start as one sound ends, or have 3 sounds start at the same time, or some combination of 3 things changing simultaneously makes you feel like you're shifting from one part of the song to the next. So I think that'd be really effective to keep in mind as you are kind of like adding in new sounds. Take things out at the same time as you add them, or change them. So have your hi-hat pattern change when the new sound starts. So when you have 3 things change simultaneously, it feels a lot more impactful. So right there would be a perfect example of a place where you could like have multiple things change up all at the same time, and that'll make it feel like, okay, this was one idea, and then this is a different new musical idea. Other than that, I really like this transition, actually. I think this works. The tempo change I'm not sold on, but if you like it, keep it. And then the other big change here that I'm not prepared for as a listener is one of your sounds starts gating, it starts chopping. Coming up here in just a second. Right there. So we go from that one kind of like plucky kind of synth sound, goes from being constant to being, every quarter note or something like that. But there's no preparation for that. There's no sound to indicate something is about to happen. So adding little sounds, like I said, reverse sounds work really well. Little drum fills work really well. Just to kind of prepare your audience that something's about to change, I think will make the whole arrangement kind of flow a lot better from one idea to the next to the next. And then other than that, so here you do the filter sweep, but that's it. Okay. So I kind of like this little bit at the end here, but it's all sounds we've heard before. So it'd be cool to hear these sounds again in a different way. So same thing with that marimba guy, change them up a little bit. So that way when it comes back, it's like, oh, this is familiar, but also new at the same time. And I think those things, more variety, having things change, kind of letting your audience know that things are about to change before they happen, and then rule of 3 for things coming in and out. If you try out those things, I think will make a huge difference in terms of the end result for this track. Because like I said, I think you have a lot of cool ideas here, but it'd be cool to see you explore those ideas some more and see how you can kind of take all of these kind of loops and turn it into an arrangement that kind of flows from, your intro, A section, B section, C section, outro. Hopefully that makes sense. Is that a useful information for you? Sweet. So next up, we got a track from Gauntya. If anybody is just now joining us and would like to send me a track, you can do so by clicking on the link up at the top of the chat. Yeah, no worries, Morgan. Thanks for sharing your track. So Gauntya, this might have been one you've shared before. I feel like I recognize the name. This might be the one we listened to before it was released, but I'm curious to hear what it sounds like now. Okay, is the wrong link then? You have another one farther down that might be a different link. Do you want me to do the second one? I'll just wait till you fix the link, I guess. All right, we'll give him a second to fix the link before we take a listen to it. All right, Gauntya, I might come back to you once you get the link situation sorted. And we'll just jump ahead and then come back. So next up, we got a track from, who's this from? Marco Joe. But this is a dope track. If you guys have not checked this out, check out this track from Galia. What's up, Marco? How you doing? Nice. That's sounding really polished. It's sounding really crisp, really clear. Love the melodies, love the drums, love all the like nice little glitchy IDM sounds in here. Very much reminds me of Mr. Bill. Yeah, really, really solid work here. I absolutely agree with what people are saying in chat. The kick sounds really nice and punchy, but it's missing a little bit of that low end. So you could use something like the boom knob or layer it with a little bit of like a subby kick, or just EQ it and try to emphasize a little bit more of that low end. Not a whole lot, just a tiny bit more sub on the kick, and I think that that would be make a big deal. The other thing is you have this nice snap sound. Which I like. I think it's a fraction of a tiny bit too loud. And I also think if it could use a tiny bit more reverb. Just the ever so slightest tiny bit of reverb and down a tiny bit in volume, and I think it'll be sitting just right in your mix. Other than those two things, I don't have a lot of critical feedback here. I think the rest of it is sounding really good. The arrangement works really well. It's really pretty and energetic. Like, this would 100% be the kind of track I'd play in like a sunrise set at a festival, and I think it would fit in perfectly. I also really love the section over here where it gets all kind of choppy. Fantastic work. It's like a really cool, I think sometimes when I'm talking to people about, okay, you got a core idea for a song, it works really well, but then it's just that same idea over and over again. This is a fantastic example of how you break up that monotony, where you're like, okay, for the first 2 minutes or so, we got one idea what this song's about. And then about 2.5 minutes in, we get into the choppy section and you're like, it's the same ideas, but presented in a new and fresh way. So it's a fantastic example of what you should be doing to keep your arrangements interesting as the song goes on, where it's like, we've heard all these sounds before, but now we're hearing them in a way that is new and kind of reapproaches that whole concept. Love it. It's great. It sounds like you have some little tiny vocal chops in here. A tiny bit more of those in terms of volume during this section, I would not mind. I think that like they're cool, but they're a little bit quiet to me. So if you turn those up a little bit, I think that'll work. Yeah, and I like the kind of like faster section at the end there. I think that works pretty well as well. But yeah, other than that, it's really comes down to get that snap and kicked dialed in, and I think you got a really really solid track here. Not much else other than that you really need to work on. Yeah, it can be hard to mix with headphones for sure. Just be sure if you are going to mix on headphones that you're kind of regularly checking on speaker systems in your car and places like that, so you can kind of hear out sounds in different situations. Because there's nothing more frustrating in the world than getting a dope sounding mix in your headphones, and then you like take it out to hear it on speakers, and you're like, it sounds like garbage still, and you like are not done at all with your mix. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking there, Marco. It sounds really good. Chat, any other thoughts, comments, ideas, questions? Gaunt, were you able to fix that link? Let me try it again. Okay, cool.
I ain't seen her face and it's driving me insane. Moon and the stars, she still wanted space. Fell in love with the distance and she got away.
I'm gonna turn down a little bit.
Miles apart, I ain't seen her face and it's driving me insane. Moon and the stars, she still wanted space. Fell in love with the distance and she got away. I ain't seen her face and it's driving me insane. wanted space, fell in love with the distance, and she got away. Now we're miles apart. I ain't seen her face, and it's driving me insane.
As always, sounds really nice and rich and full. Your mixes are like they're getting so clean, like really fantastic work on that. I have some thoughts about this track, and some of them I have a controversial opinion about this. Maybe I think this track might be better without the vocals. I'm not sure. Like, if I was to listen to this track on like a Spotify playlist or something like that, I think the vocals, they fit with the song pretty well, and I think that they really help kind of carry both the intro and that little break section there. But I'm kind of biased against vocals unless they're like really adding a lot to the song. And to me, the instrumental seems stronger than the vocals. If you love the vocals and you're attached to them, keep them. But if this were my track, I might not use the vocals in there. I think the rest of the track stands on itself as strong enough without them. Other than that, the big thing was you have a lot of these kind of horns that are like moving around a lot, and it sounds like you're using a bunch of delays to do that sound excellent. I love that little vocal chop there. More of that would be great. It's a combination, I think it sounds like, of some of the delays on the horns with, you have this kind of atmospheric pad sound in the background. It's like this high pitched sound. It's a little bit too much going on in the background. So I would turn the delays on the horns down and turn that high pitched sound down, and I think that will still sound nice and rich and full, but you won't get a lot of those like high frequencies bouncing around in the background that I feel like are a little distracting. This part sounds dope. I love it. Yeah, that high pitched pad I think is a little bit too much, a little bit too loud. And the lower pitched pad could be a little bit louder. I think the vocals work better in this section. Maybe I would keep the vocals here, but get rid of the vocals in the beginning. That might be a good compromise if you like the vocals. You have the same issue here that you have in the first section, where you have a lot of these background sounds that are kind of bouncing around that end up being pretty loud and taking a lot of space in your mix. So I would make sure those background sounds, like the delays and some of those pads, are a little bit quieter, and then I think you're golden. Yeah, more of those vocal samples, because I love that vocal sample. But the kick sounds really clean. The drums, just in general, like you're really kind of nailing that groove in combination with the bass line and the horns. So I think it works really well. So in retrospective, I think that clean up the two sections here, especially in that mid to high range. Maybe get rid of the vocals in the beginning. Those are kind of the main things there. More of that vocal chop, that one little, because that vocal chop only happens once per like rhythmic section, as far as I can tell. So more of that would be cool as well. But it's sounding really clean. It sounds really huge, and I think that, like I said, your mixes are, with each song that I hear, are getting cleaner and cleaner and cleaner, and they're just sounding like really, really nice and polished, which is great. Cool. Any chat? Any other thoughts, questions, comments, ideas? If anybody is just now joining us and would like to submit a track, you can click on the link up at the top of the chat. That'll take you to the spreadsheet, and that's how you send me a track. If you are enjoying the stream, enjoying the feedback, you can feel free to hit the like button, subscribe if you're not subscribed, check out the Discord, check out the Patreon, any of those kind of things. That is all super appreciated. All right, next up we got a track from Connor. Let me turn it back up. Let me turn up some more. I think it was just the last track was very loud. All right, so this is a really cool sounding track. I like very much stylistically what you're going for here. It has this like, it's interesting because it has this almost like it has a very ambient, almost experimental kind of feel to it, but it also kind of has this like post rock like build of energy that's really, really nice, combined with this 4 on the floor beat. However, the by far the biggest issue here, honestly, like with production stuff, I don't have any, not really any major complaints there. However, the mix is where this is really suffering. It seems like there's a few things that are just obviously way too quiet, and there's a few things that are obviously way too loud, and then that makes the whole balance of the whole song feel off, and it makes it much harder to listen to than if those things were not an issue there. So the big thing for me is even at the beginning here, your kick is just way too quiet. It's just like it can barely be heard. Like I cranked up the volume coming through OBS so you guys could hear it a little better. But it's like it's very much quieter than everything else is, which means it doesn't have any power, which means it doesn't have a lot of impact on the song and that rhythmic energy. So kick needs to go way up. And then I think what's happening here is you have the low end that comes here. You have this sub bass. The sub bass is way too loud, like way, way, way too loud. And so what's happening here is when you're mastering this and you're trying to get it nice and loud, because your sub is so loud, you can't master it that far. You can't actually like create a nice balanced master here because you have way too much sub. So crank the sub way down, and then that way you can turn everything up. And I think between those two things, that might not be all you need to do for the mix here, but those two things just by themselves it'll be like night and day on this track. And I think it'll allow you to, I'm not sure if you mastered this yourself or you had somebody else master it, or if it's even mastered at all. But I think by doing those two things, you'll be able to get more dynamics in there and then be able to capitalize on those dynamics when you go through the mastering process. So hopefully that makes sense, because a lot of what I'm hearing here is just the sub. And like even now, I feel like I have to crank the volume just to make this audible, even though I can see the waveform is nice and big. So there's going to be a few complex issues here to deal with the master, or the mix and then the master. Yeah, an overly loud sub can actually cause some like really big issues in the rest of the mix there. But in terms of what else is going on in the song here, I love everything else. It sounds really pretty and it sounds really nice. It kind of actually reminds me of some of the stuff that After Party has shared on the channel before. Yeah, that sub being too cloud means the whole mix just sounds really cluttered and it's really hard to like pick out individual sounds. But yeah, those are the things I'm really hearing more than anything else. I like the production on it. I like the sound you're going for. Yeah, your use of like reverb and space is really nice. There's a lot of like really positive things about this track that I have to struggle to hear, but once I hear them, they sound really cool. So I think fix the mix. Then once you fix the mix, do the master again. Make sure it sounds nice and rich and full through the master, and then I think you're good to go. And I would definitely go back and fix the mix on here, because I think this song has a lot of potential. There's a lot of good work in here that I think deserves to be heard in a way where you can actually hear everything. So that's my main feedback here. Everything else I'm pretty into. I do think in terms of production, if you did want to go back and change any of that, as the rest of the song kind of elevates in energy, I do think it'd be cool if the drums got a little bit more complex than what they're doing now. Like there's a little bit more going on with the drums towards the end of the song, but it'd be cool if they like, added in some extra snare fills or like added in some extra hi-hats or made the hi-hat pattern a little more complex. That way the drums are kind of changing with the energy level of the rest of the track. But yeah, I like what you got going on here, but I want to be able to hear everything a little bit better. But I appreciate you sharing that. Sweet. So as of right now, we got one more track from Petros. And then I think we've gotten through every song on this spreadsheet, or at least everybody who has submitted one song. I think there are a couple people who have submitted multiple songs. So if you have not yet submitted a song and you will, and you would like to submit a song, now would be the time to do it. Yeah, and then Connor, if you do another round of mixing and you want to get some more feedback on it, feel free to come back and I'll take a listen to it again and kind of hopefully point you in the right direction if you're going in that way or not. So just because this track is 8 minutes long, Petrus, I might jump around a little bit. So just so you know. I like that bass line. All right, I'm gonna jump around a little bit. Nice. I think you got a lot of stuff going on here that's really cool, and I think this is pretty dope for your first track in Ableton. So the big thing is, number one, it's a bit too long. I think that in this style of music, if you're going there for that kind of like minimal house, almost like a pseudo techno kind of thing, you can get away with a track that's this long. However, I'm not sure this track necessarily needs to be this long. If you are going to go for this longer arrangement, this 5, 6, 7, 8 minute arrangement, it's really important to give your audience breaks, right? And that's the big thing that's missing. It's basically intro, drum beat starts, and then about like 7 minutes of kick drum nonstop. So make sure you give yourself little sections, unless there's one right here. No. Make sure you give your audience sections where it's like, okay, here's the beat with all the ideas, and then here's a little break. And then here's the beat with the ideas, and then here's a little break. And it's also useful just like, when you're on stage, when you're DJing, like there's sometimes you want an audience to go crazy, and sometimes they want a chance to chill out. And that kind of go back and forth can make a big difference. So I think that'll help out a lot, because you have a lot of really good synth ideas in this track. Like every time I jumped around a little bit, it was like, here's a new synth idea, and it's doing something cool. So you could have some synth ideas that you save for those little break sections. There's a few right in here that I thought would be really cool. This guy right here, the little echoey synth line, could be really cool as like a little break section, where it's like it's just that and maybe one other sound, and then the beat comes back in. So play around with like adding things and taking them out, and that can be a really cool way to kind of fill out this whole part of the arrangement. Other than that, I like what you have going on here. I think the beat works pretty well. The bass line works pretty well. I think both the beat and the bass line could have a little bit more variety. And that way it's like, it's not just the same, like you keep the 4 on the floor most likely, but like other parts change. Also in this kind of house music, little tiny changes in the percussion have big impacts in terms of the energy and the emotionality of the song. So little tiny changes to percussion every 16 bars, 32 bars, however long, could be really useful. The other thing you need to watch out for is it sounds like for the most part, most of your synths were in tune. However, there are a few parts, I think there's one in here. There's a few part where there are a few notes that were out of key, and those kind of threw me off a little bit. It happened here, and I think it happened around 3 minutes or so. Yeah, like right there. Not so good. So watch out. Make sure as you're playing your synths and you're doing this kind of stuff, you're staying in key. Otherwise, it's gonna sound a little weird. But yeah, those are kind of the main things that I would like to see here. It seems like you're already kind of aware that like right now the arrangement is very linear. But adding in little breaks just helps the arrangement flow a lot better. So watch out for that. Other than that, the intro is kind of cool. I like that. Oh yeah, I kind of mentioned this with the drums, changing up the drums, but same with the bass line. Switch things up with the bass line every once in a while, and that will also help the whole arrangement kind of flow a bit. But yeah, I think you should be proud of this. I think it's got a lot of really cool ideas in here. They just need to be organized now. So you have like an A section has one set of ideas, a B section that's different and identifiably different, a C section, and then you can go back to A or go to D or switch things up a bit. So it's mostly arrangement stuff, really, that I want to see here. Arrangement and variety. If you work on those two things, then I think you're pretty good to go. Does that make sense, hopefully? In chat, any other thoughts, comment, ideas? Mason, is that a song that you want me to review? If you can click on the link that is pinned up at the top of chat, you can toss it in that spreadsheet and I will take a listen to it. Cool, awesome. So as of right now, I think we've gotten through everybody who's put a link in the spreadsheet. I'm going to hang out for a few more minutes in case anybody else has more tracks they want to share. I think there's a track from After Party and another track from Gauntya that I'm not going to have time to get to today. Sorry, guys. But I'll save you guys for next week. But I appreciate all you guys showing up here, hanging out. The tracks this week and the last couple weeks have been just absolutely fantastic. It's crazy to see how fast and how much a lot of you guys are progressing, especially a lot of you guys who are regulars. So really fantastic work. It's like, it's getting me super amped to write a lot more music. So it's really inspiring to see you guys and all the different styles and things that you're using. I will obviously be back next Monday for another office hours hangout kind of stream. On top of that, if you are a Patreon member, if you're one of like the top level Patreon members, you can, I'm doing a workshop, a Zoom workshop this weekend, which I need to officially announce on Patreon, but this Saturday I'm gonna do a Zoom workshop on racks, audio effect racks, MIDI effect racks, drum racks, instrument racks, all the racks and that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in checking that out, you can check out the Patreon, which is linked below if you want to see what's happening over there. But yeah, I really appreciate all you guys coming in, hanging out, all the super chatters, all the people who not only shared their songs, which I know is a really scary thing to do, but also gave each other feedback. I think it's much more useful to have everybody here participating and help each other out and giving each other feedback. Minton, were you able to get into the spreadsheet and get something linked in there? Hopefully. Like I said, we'll hang out for a few minutes. Okay, no worries. If you are not able to put the link in the spreadsheet right now, you can always put it in later, and that's will that way the start of stream next week, next Wednesday, it'll already be in there, and I can just take a listen to it at the start of next stream. Or if it's already posted somewhere, I can try to look it up. I guess I can just kind of Google whatever you put in there. All right, well, it's only pull it up on Spotify, unfortunately. Yeah, so sometime whenever you get a chance, you can just follow that link there when you're not on your phone, and then put your link into the spreadsheet, and I'll take a look at it next week. Sweet. So I think we're gonna call it right around here. Once again, thanks to everybody for showing up, hanging out, sharing their tracks. I'll be back Monday for a stream, and then Wednesday once again for another song feedback stream where you guys can send me more tracks. So I hope you guys all have a really great evening and holiday if you are in America or the US. And yeah, make some new tracks. And I will see you guys real soon.